This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by Zamp, a sales tax solution for e-commerce brands built by sales tax experts. As brands gear up for an explosive Black Friday Cyber Monday, they're also making sure their sales tax is in order. Why? Because more transactions means greater sales tax risk. Since last year, over 300 e-commerce brands like Cult Gaia, Tushy, and Sanzo have mitigated that risk by switching over to Zamp. They're spending as little as 2 minutes on sales tax each month and saving hundreds of hours every year. Today, Zamp supports platforms like Shopify, Amazon, BigCommerce, QuickBooks, and more. If you're selling on your own customer platform, they have an API too. So go to zamp.com/thread today and sign up for free sales tax service for the rest of the year. That's over 4 months of free registrations, filing, and compliance. That's zamp.com/thread. Hey folks, welcome to the e-commerce playbook podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And I'm joined this fine morning, it's a Monday, by Taylor Holiday, who is, of course, the CEO here at CTC. Taylor, what's going on today?
Just going to try and live up to this headline so I don't get accused of clickbait, of calling this the most consequential meta update of all time.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can make good on
Let's
that.
do it. Do you get accused of clickbait often, Taylor?
Yeah, regularly.
All the time. That's just because you got something to say. That's what I say. All right. So
Yeah.
today here, and speaking of which, we're gonna jump into, this is essentially another segment of Defend That Tweet, where Taylor tweeted, this was last Wednesday, I guess. So it's a little bit older, but today marks the most consequential update in the Meta ad product of all time. Meta is releasing 1, optimization for third-party measurement, starting with GA and Northbeam, with Triple Whale shortly behind. 2, optimization for incremental conversions. One of these has the potential to make a massive business impact for you. I'll let you debate which you think it is. Or another way you could phrase that is choose wisely. So I think like maybe a good place to jump in is just some overview of maybe the messaging or the language that we got from Meta about what this is. So do you want to maybe jump into that real quick? Like in terms
Well, let me set a historical foundation for why it's so consequential.
Sure.
So if we go back to the attribution wars of the post iOS era, where I was fighting all the attribution platforms, it was fundamentally rooted in this problem of disassociating optimization and measurement. So people, if you're not familiar with the Meta Ads product, there's a really important selection that you make in the process of building an ad campaign. And that is, what would you like Meta to optimize for? Okay. What that is saying is, which purchases that occur in different views do you want Meta to count as a conversion and then try and optimize for more things like that? So if we think about what the choices are right now, you can choose, the default is 7-day click, 1-day view. That means that every purchase that occurs within 7 days of a user clicking on an ad or 24 hours of them seeing an ad will be counted by Meta's algorithm towards a purchase that meets the objective of the campaign, and they will optimize to accomplish more things like that. You can narrow that to just 7-day click. You can narrow it to 1-day click, 1-day view. You can narrow it even further to just 1-day click. And they recently, a few months ago, added engaged views, which is another optimization setting. And the most consequential thing you can change inside of a campaign is not the attribution setting. Attribution actually has no effect on optimization, but it's related to optimization. And so my problem with all the third-party tooling was that it had no effect on optimization. And so what would happen is, as we as advertisers would come in, we'd try and change things in the ad account, but you couldn't move a lever in the ad account to affect the attribution view. This is the problem when people would use last click Google Analytics. It's the problem when they would use Triple Whale. It's the problem when they would use Northbeam. Any third-party measurement solution that was disassociated from optimization was a problem. Okay, this is a really important foundational thing to understand about why this is so consequential in terms of what they're doing. Meta has never allowed you to optimize for a business outcome that wasn't one of those 5 settings as reported by their internal tools. People's challenge with that is that the reported results inside of Meta are not often directly related to your business outcomes. Okay, so that's why everybody would be frustrated with it. Okay, so that's an important piece of historical context. The second important piece is to listen to something that Mark Zuckerberg said in an earnings call this past week about where Meta is headed and how AI plays into this story as well. Mark said that eventually the ad product, you are going to simply give Meta your business objective and they will handle the rest. And if you think about every piece of tactical execution that exists, from media buying account setup to creative to targeting to all these things that the user usually controls, I believe that AI is going to do all of them more effectively. But the one thing that the human is going to have to always decide is, what is the goal for my business? Because that is very fundamentally there is no objective answer to that.
Mhm.
It's not a mathematical formula. It's always about what you as the user want. So understanding that context of where this is headed, where has it been, is the right foundation for discussing now this next set of specific updates and what they just enabled.
Okay.
So that's my context.
Gotcha. Okay. So, well, then let's go into this sort of binary choice that you set up here, which is okay. So now, obviously, the two things that are being released are one, now you can optimize for third party measurement, which seems like
That's
it
right.
sort of erases the problem that you were talking about, although I suspect it doesn't totally. But,
That's
and
right.
then the second piece, of course, is now optimization for incremental conversions, which essentially, and here's the language that Meta uses. Incremental conversions are conversions that would not have occurred without the ad being shown, in contrast to conversions when optimizing for volume, which focus on driving as many total attributed conversions as possible. So maybe it would be helpful to dig in a little bit more to actually the definition there on the second.
Well, do you want to go to incrementality, or do we want to start with the third-party
Sure.
tools? Because they're two different updates, and I want to make sure let's start with the third-party analytics tools.
Okay.
So, can you read maybe what they've said about what's possible there, and then I'll dive into it.
Okay. Let me. So this is what Meta has to say essentially about including third-party optimization tools. We've already received meaningful aggregated insights from test advertisers who have integrated their analytics tools. Using those insights and combining it with additional internal learnings, we are beginning to roll out changes to our ad system that take more of the cross-publisher journey into account to help drive more value for businesses. Based on this change, we expect advertisers to see improvements in Meta attributed conversions within their third-party analytics tools, although CPMs may increase as a result. When we tested this in a recent experiment, advertisers saw a 30% average increase in their Meta attributed conversions as measured by their third-party tools. If you're still wasting time trying to figure out sales tax, you need to consider Zamp starting yesterday. Since last year, over 300 e-commerce brands have switched over to Zamp. Their customers have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket expenses and dozens of hours each month managing sales tax. Zamp is offering e-commerce playbook listeners 4 months of free registrations, filing, and compliance at zamp.com/thread, or click the first link in the show notes. And if you have an existing sales tax provider, hey, a second opinion never hurts. Learn how Zamp could save you time and money and even help drive revenue this Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Every dollar counts.
Okay, so what Meta is saying is, wait, if you're going to measure us based on Google Analytics attribution or Northbeam attribution or coming soon Triple Whale attribution, fine, we're now going to optimize for those outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're saying is, in the process of connecting attribution and optimization, we see an increase in purchases. Here's the important part, as reported by that tool.
I see.
So you want me to make last click GA go up? No problem. We will now make that number go up by optimizing for specifically those purchases. Because before, what was happening is you were measuring last click GA, but Meta was seeing and reporting and optimizing for a bunch of other purchases based on the optimization setting you have. This is why the whole thing was a scam.
Yeah.
And this is this is actually like so validating to fighting this battle, was that you cannot disassociate these things. You cannot disassociate optimization and measurement. And that's what this is all proving. So now here's the really important thing, is what Meta is capitulating to, that I think they're ultimately going to regret doing this, is basically saying, fine, you want to use that to measure our results? Go ahead. We'll just make your magical number inside the third-party platform go up. Cool. Now, question is, does that measurement actually produce a business outcome? And this is where the second thing that they introduced actually, I think, is the much more important thing. And what I was being a little snarky about in my tweet is, one of these matters and one of it doesn't, because I think plugging in Google Analytics and optimizing for GA is a terrible idea. There, I said it. It's a terrible idea. It is not what you actually want. What you actually want are incremental conversions to your business. In other words, purchases that would not have occurred otherwise. And so Meta has offered for a long time conversion lift studies where they do this. They've run a geo holdout to help you understand what percentage of the reported conversions are incremental. And it's so hilarious to say, like, well, if you'd rather have us just report all the purchases, we could do that, or we could just show you the ones that we actually created, which is what incrementality really means. It means purchases that would not have occurred otherwise, that were causal to the advertising.
Okay.
That is the gold standard of what we all want.
So talk to me about, I think there's two things to dig into. One is maybe talking a little bit more about why optimizing for an outcome reported in GA is generally speaking a bad idea. And then the other would be, why are these two things mutually exclusive? Maybe.
So, yeah, and that's a fair question. They don't necessarily have to be. So let's talk about the default general reporting system with Google in particular.
Mhm.
Is Google used to default report on last click. Okay. If you were to optimize your media to increase last click conversions, what do you think it will begin to optimize for, Richard?
Last click conversion,
Yep. Which is more likely to push you towards what part of the customer journey?
bottom of the funnel. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what happens is if you obligate yourself to only count conversions that happen on the user's very last click, you are going to begin to move towards the very end of the customer journey. So it is going to, by definition, move your dollars into a stage of that journey that I don't think most businesses actually want.
Mhm.
And so the end result is going to be now, this is the problem with attribution is that Google offers lots of different attribution views. So if you're optimizing for Google's MTA view, which I have found, if you go look at the new in GA4, their default attribution view is now their sort of Google modeled total impact view or whatever they call it. That is an MTA solution that hyper weights towards last click, in my experience, when I compare it to different attribution models. So it's still going to give a preference to that stage of the journey, which I think is ultimately any proxy measure for what you actually care about, which is new customer revenue or overall business contribution margin, is problematic, and a triangulation of what you actually want that's not necessary. What you should just measure is the ads result on your business.
Mhm.
New customer revenue, contribution margin. You don't need the proxy. You don't need to triangulate out to a third measure solution. That's every time I see a business get. So that's my concern. Is you then have to go establish a relationship between that third party measure and the actual business objective you care about. Because Google reported revenue is not what you're after. You're after money in your bank account.
Right. That makes sense. So kind of sounds like what you're saying is not only so the previous issue is that you couldn't optimize for these third-party attribution tools results. And now kind of what we're saying is that those results are actually were never really the results that you wanted anyway. So
That's right. And I'm sure you can hack them into a relationship, but I just think it's unnecessary when the second opportunity of what Meta released is we are going to do a geo holdout and isolate to make sure that our conversions would not have occurred without us. Those are incrementally positive contributing conversions, which is what I think we should all be after.
Yeah.
So I would just say that of the options, I'm not saying that if you are, as an organization, ruthlessly committed to measuring your ads in GA or Northbeam, fine, use the optimization towards that. That makes sense to me. If you're confident in those results, cool. But if you get to build from scratch and you're choosing, I would choose the second option, which is incremental conversions.
Gotcha.
Now, the challenge with this, it's important to know that Meta has stated that their ability to determine incremental conversions is predicated on one, you've run conversion lift studies in the past, or ideally you're running them all the time. That data will then inform the optimization setting. And if you've never run one, they will use the aggregate data set on your behalf. So it is most likely to be most valuable if you are running incremental optimization in complement to conversion lift studies so that they can have data on which customers are most incremental to your business individually. This is the same as Measured or House or anybody else, is that if you use a default set of incremental weights, they will use those. Unless you have individual studies of your own brand, in which case that data will inform the optimization. So it is a process still of doing testing in parallel to optimization.
Mm-hmm. So with the incremental conversion optimization, is part of what that offers then, because we talked about so if you use GA, you're optimized for GA or whatever, you're basically privileging the bottom of the funnel. Is part of what the incremental conversion optimization part of what it does is actually allows you to think about the top of the funnel a little more clearly, or actually drive acquisition in a clearer way than you were able to before, or something along those lines.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily specifically only related to acquisition. It could also drive incremental returning customer revenue.
Sure.
It's just saying that those purchases would not have occurred without this ad product existing.
Yeah.
And so it's really important. And therefore, I think more likely to not conflate a bunch of purchases that already had a bunch of work done to get them to that very last stage. So if we go back to, I did this video where I sort of break down the sort of first principles of incrementality, where it's like the customer journey stage and then the optimization setting. And the further down the customer journey you move from like net new visitors with extreme holdouts all the way down to people with stuff in their cart, like you're going to get less incremental impact if you advertise only to people who already have things in their cart.
Mhm.
They're already highly likely to purchase anyways, right? So yeah, incrementality will tend towards the obligation of new customers or causal impact, really,
Mhm.
which will tend to move towards that. Now, the missing variable is the expectation of efficiency on that incrementality, right? So, and how much volume you're able to produce against that expectation.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like kind of like a way to summarize this maybe is like what's happening is that so point one, which is the optimization for third party measurement. The reason that those third party tools exist to some extent is just when iOS 4 happened, and the narrative was essentially that Facebook's attribution, its in platform attribution, is no longer clear enough for us. We have to have these third party tools in order to understand what's happening on Facebook. In rolling out this optimization, or rather, yeah, the ability to optimization for the third party measurement, they're saying, yeah, okay, you can now use those tools. But additionally, by rolling out the incremental conversion optimization, they're saying, and now we actually have a much better attribution, a way to understand attribution here than any of these third party tools. So really they're saying like, actually still the best way to know what's happening is via our in-platform tools. And this is a way that we've vastly improved that. But you can
Yeah.
use your little third party tools if you'd like to. So
Well, what's funny is it's basically relegated third-party tools to just a data point.
yeah.
Because if I'm optimizing for GA or for Northbeam, why do I need to go look in Northbeam? Because what you're saying to me is that my reported results in Meta will now look like
Mhm.
this. They're going to create alignment between them, right? So really, all its value is at that point is just passing you back an MTA data number. And really, like that's at the end of the day, like a lot of these tools will just get boiled down to a model with a UI on top of it,
Yeah.
right? And the entire value is on the output of the model, which is just a number, right? So it's like that in a lot of ways, it's funny that it does diminish that. But you're right. It's also saying you can do that, but we still think the best way to do it would be to use this incrementality optimization alongside 4 conversion lift studies a year that informs it. Otherwise, we're going to use our repository of all lift tests and specific advertisers, historical lift tests to optimize and report. So, yes, the point though is that it's moving towards trust your metadata inside the platform more for generating the business impacts you care about.
Yeah. I think what one interesting, so one of the commenters on your tweet here, Rishab, so we'll shout him out here. But he said it reads like option one is the optimization of a sense of control, and or option two is the optimization of money, which he's framed as not
Well
a
said.
trivial choice. But yeah, I think that's really well said. Is that like that's always kind of what the third party attribution tool has been doing, is giving you a feeling that you know more, or that you have more information, and more information is therefore better. Whereas what the second option is giving you is actually the ability to put money in your pocket.
That's right.
But
That's right. And it's nice when someone else says it so that I don't just get accused of always being that voice. But yeah, I think that's exactly right. Is that what above all else, if we just work from a first principle, what you care to measure is your bank account. You care to measure Shopify revenue. You care to measure contribution margin to your business. That at the end of the day, that's the governing truth.
Mhm.
Everything else above that is like an attempt at directing you towards that measurement, right? So my experience is that every organization uses that as a measure. Nobody in the world doesn't look at their revenue. Some don't look at their profit, but
Mhm.
most have some sales dashboard. Everybody has that. And then whether you like it or not, every media buyer is looking in the ad account.
Mhm.
It's the introduction of the third data point. When it becomes a triangle, then it becomes a complex mess. It doesn't actually get clearer, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So the more that I can tie the relationship directly between the platform and my business, the better. And this is, I think, going to be a helpful way to do
Yeah. So maybe I'll say like, or we can kind of leave it with what Facebook or Facebook's language around kind of what you're talking about their eventual goal being to move Meta towards being a platform where you click the button that says increase contribution margin, and then that just kind of happens. So as part of their
That's right.
ongoing work to build AI-enabled automation solutions that allow any business to grow, we're evolving our ad system so that the results we drive are more customized to each business's objectives and the way they measure value in whichever external analytics tool they use. Some businesses
That's
want to
right.
maximize total conversions. Others want to increase the value of every conversion. Understanding exactly what a business values allows us to bring the level of customization to each of their ad campaigns, which is integral to making sure our AI models continue to maximize every dollar. So I think previously, a lot of the times it was just like the purpose of running Facebook ads is to get a return on your Facebook ads. But we've evolved to sort of a much more complex way of thinking about that. And this is building
Yeah,
towards that.
that's right. And it's much more honest in the sense that it
Mhm.
is true that every business has a different desired outcome relative to their state,
Yeah.
right? Where some businesses are in such a desperate position that what they need is only dollars that make them money today. And they need to be able to optimize for that. Other businesses have an opportunity to take a more latent payback period. They want to drive ongoing brand awareness and demand for the future. They're making long-term investment decisions. It is different for every business. And this is the same thing that when we come in with every partner, it's a question of what do you want to optimize for? And so if you think about our spend and AMER model, it's basically this. What do you want to optimize for? New customer revenue, new customer contribution margin, lifetime contribution margin, lifetime revenue. We have an ability to set the ad budget relative to the business objective. This is just a downstream optimization setting in the ad account that matches that same principle. What do you as a business want me to accomplish with this ad product? And that's what every business should be asking. That's what this is why I'm so bullish on the way that Meta's going about this. Is they're saying, you give us the business objective that you want, and we will make our ad product accomplish that thing. Versus going, look over here, we're just going to always report on the same standard view, and you can't change the optimization settings, and we're just going to tell you why it's valuable, which I see some of the other platforms kind of stuck in, is that they're not willing to change the optimization to match the business outcome.
Mhm.
And that's really the key here for everybody.
Cool. All right. Anything else you want to hit on this?
Look, all of these things are subject to efficacy and testing. Is that incrementality works if it produces incremental results, but it's a higher standard of, it's a higher bar. And so in some ways, I'm curious to see if brands struggle to produce the IROAS that they want. And if it leads to frustration or this sense that it's not working from Meta as we increase the standard of measurement. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Is that I just don't know that for every business, there are incremental profitable conversions given the present construct of their margin profile and creative mix and et cetera. And so I think there may be an initial pushback to I tried it and it quote unquote didn't work.
Hmm.
And so I just, it's going to be really interesting to see, but I wouldn't be surprised if the initial wave of responses, what the heck, it's saying I got a crappy incremental ROAS. And it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
maybe it's revealing to you what was hidden before.
Yeah. Well, so it's the clarity of this new tool is going to reveal that Meta maybe wasn't working as well for some brands as they thought it was, which is going to have an
That's right.
interesting impact. Yeah.
That's
Cool.
right. And that may evolve the settings and structure of the ad campaigns. I think it's going to put pressure on things like Meta's constant push towards reach and traffic and video view campaigns that I have yet to see produce a good incremental ROAS. So I think it's going to put a pressure on all these ad products to really make business impact, which is what we as an industry want. We want pressure for performance. We don't want obfuscated results. We want real business impact. And so I think it's a good standard, and it's the highest standard, and it's a positive for the industry.
Cool. All right. Well, speaking of real business impact, if you want us to make one for you, all you got to do is go to our site, commentary.co.com, click the Hire Us button, drop us a note. We'd love to chat. But I think that'll do it for this week, folks. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.